welcome to Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical. This is Christy Palermo and Jennifer Hobson. We are on episode 4. Thanks for joining us. And last week we were actually talking about imposter syndrome and how it pops up and how it can create our identity. And so this week we wanted to roll in how that identity can have its limits, and we limit ourselves there, and then we end up self-sabotaging. So this week is all about self-sabotage. I think we all can relate to this topic. So Jen, are you more aware of how you self-sabotage, or do you think it's more of a subconscious thing?
I think for me, I am aware of it now. I would say since becoming an entrepreneur, and part of what I do in my business is personal development, that's when I was able to identify it. I can't necessarily say, before even, maybe in school as like high school or college, or even, the jobs leading up to where I am as an entrepreneur, that I may have been aware of it. I definitely did it. And I would say there's probably cycles of self-sabotage that I experienced. What I can say now is with the work that I continually do on myself, whether it's reading or journaling or just even listening to podcasts, I am much more aware of those self-sabotaging kind of habits and those cycles for me. And I can feel myself being kind of drawn back into those habits, or where I'm really working against it. And a lot of it comes down to mindset, to be honest, for me.
That's funny you say that, because I was just thinking how that seems to be a recurring theme with us so far in just our 4 episodes, is we talk about mindset, and seeing that the two of us have really seen a shift in our own mindsets since starting our businesses and being in network marketing. And I really feel like that self-development really plays a part in mindset, which helps in turn everything else in our lives. And
Yeah.
I would absolutely agree. I like how you say that, because I don't think I was really aware of it when I was younger. Like we don't even know.
No, and I don't think we were able, even if we were aware, I don't think we were able to identify, hey, we are self-sabotaging ourselves in this instance, in my relationship, in my business, in, even in school, right? You self-sabotage yourself. You have, if you think back to college, you're like, oh, I got 2 months to complete this assignment, right? And you wait until the day before, which, I mean, if you're a procrastinator like me, I am a professional procrastinator. But those are like the different types of things that we do. And if we don't identify it as we get older, it just shows up in different ways, right? And if we don't identify it, then we also don't know how to overcome it. And I think that's the biggest challenge. If you are not able to go, oh my God, I'm doing those habits that I know sabotage me from success. And maybe it's not success in business, but it's success in a relationship, success in a job. It's success as leading or being a coach of a team. Whatever it is that you're doing, there are things that you go, take a step back and go, oh my God, am I in self-sabotage, or am I in growth mode?
Yeah, it can, like you said, it can be in so many different areas of our lives, even with finances, with whatever it is we're trying to find growth in. Usually we have this limit of, I'd say, like a happiness, success limit that we reach. And I kind of touched on the book last week, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and it's so good. And he talks about how we all have these upper limits, these places where we find like a cap for our happiness, success, love, finances, relationships, like you're saying. And we tend to hit this limit if we're not aware of it, as you mentioned, if we're not aware of it. And then we start to self-sabotage or do some different things to bring ourselves back down. And what we're doing is we're bringing ourselves back down to our comfort level. And so that point is exactly where the growth is happening, that discomfort of like, oh, I don't know how to accept this much love, or I don't know how to accept this kind of success. And so most of the time, what I've noticed anyway, especially with growing our businesses, is noticing like, I didn't know how to accept that kind of success. So subconsciously I was sabotaging myself.
For sure.
And Yeah, and just the different ways that it shows up as self-sabotage.
I love that you said that. And truly, what I've identified is the death of growth is comfort.
Mm,
When you get comfortable in a situation, and I'm not saying, you don't get to a certain point and you're happy. Happy and comfort are two different things. And when we go, I'm comfortable with my position, even though we've kind of given up a little bit, I'm comfortable with how my life is. I'm comfortable with the money I make. It's not what I want to make, but I'm comfortable with it. Then we stop growing. And I
mhm.
think that it's the biggest death to growth is comfort. Are you
I
in your
won.
comfort zone? Right? That's why they call it a comfort zone. You don't grow in your comfort zone.
I 100% agree with that. It's right where that discomfort lies. And so I think identifying the different ways that we sabotage ourselves, I think helps us be aware of when it's happening. So if you know you're going for certain growth in different areas of if you're in your life, like we just mentioned, wealth, success, relationships, love, um, just freedom in your life, whatever it is you're looking for, there's different ways, as in that book that he identified that I found are really true to me. So maybe it rings true for other people too. And those things are worrying, which I think we can all relate to that.
Right? I am an
Kind of
expert.
take
I am a professional procrastinator and I'm an expert warrior. I'm
I,
gonna put those on my resume.
right. I think we can all relate to that. And so, yeah, so worrying, blame and criticism towards ourselves and towards others, squabbling, and that's just bringing up little fights, picking little fights, which now that I have identified that, that could be something little where I might be finding a lot of happiness in my day, and all of a sudden I'm the one picking a fight over literally nothing. But once you're aware of it, you're like, oh, I might have just hit an upper limit. I might have just hit that threshold of like, okay, so it's that
This day is going
attention.
too good. I have to sabotage it, right? This
Yes.
this whole day seems way too perfect. What is wrong? And a lot of times it goes, what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with the situation? And I mean, I love the word squabbling. I think it's just kind of funny. I want to say it
Yeah.
again. But I think it's also sometimes you're not just squabbling with other people, and a lot of times in your immediate family, but it's with yourself. You start picking a fight
Mm.
with yourself.
That is, yeah. Yep, absolutely. I'm just thinking of like the million times a days I'm putting myself down in my head, and and then once you can identify that, it's like you can bring attention to like, okay, you're just trying to protect me, like I'm talking to myself. You're
Yeah.
just trying to protect me from whatever imaginary thing you think is blocking you, and then you're able to release it and be like, okay, no, I can accept the love coming into my life. I can accept the happiness that's happening because I deserve it. So some other ways, getting sick or hurt, obviously not all injuries, all sicknesses in that way, but there are some that pop up when we're in a really huge growth mode. All of a sudden we have that big injury, all of a sudden we have that big sickness that knocks us back down, um, or an integrity breach. Another way to say that is just keeping our agreements either to ourselves or other people. That's one that I can absolutely relate to with my business. Is I would start to subconsciously panic that I was reaching a certain height in my business, and all of a sudden I would like have days of not keeping to the things that I said I was going to do for my business to keep it growing, and all of a sudden I'm not keeping those agreements to myself and sometimes others. And so again, drawing attention to that and being like, okay, I'm breaking my own integrity of what I say I'm going to do to get to this certain point. And then two other ones is not speaking truth to relevant people, which I think can be really because then you're kind of having a block between you and that person if you're not just speaking a truth that needs to come up, as well as hiding significant feelings, which again, I can totally relate to that one because I've been one that just always really held everything in, for a long time. And now this is some work that's coming up for myself and seeing how I need to speak up when things are bothering me, when something is relevant to me, and just again, it's a block of energy if I'm not letting that out and letting a person know how I'm feeling, or even talking to myself about it,
For
about
sure.
a thing that's coming
That
up.
last one definitely hits home, and I think it hits home different for you than it does me. Your growth has been in the sharing of your emotions and the difficult conversations, where for me, it's been the opposite self-sabotage is I am always open and truthful, and sometimes for some people, it's too much, right? It's what, and then I end up being called, blunt and over the top and too serious and all of these things, or critical, right? When I'm just trying to share my true feelings and my emotions and how whether or not they're making me feel. So that can definitely be a way of self-sabotage though too. If I go, you know what, I'm not comfortable in this situation, let me put a stop to it and tell you how I really feel because I want it to
Mm.
stop. That is my barrier that keeps you an arm's length away because I'm going to tell you how I really feel and I know that you can't handle it, but that's how I'm protecting myself.
And you are totally speaking in general of how you relate to that, and me as a person am hearing that I am that person that will stop in my tracks. Like,
Yeah.
I will stop the conversation because now I'm uncomfortable that you brought it whatever up or wanted to stop the conversation, and I'm not gonna confront
Yep.
that emotion. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's
it's
where our opposites.
definitely opposites, and I mean, you delved out a lot of information, and I'm sure for each individual, there's other ways we can get in our own way. But what I heard you say, is that cap that we put on ourselves, that kind of almost a paper wall, but it's a paper ceiling, right? There's nothing actually holding us back, but it brings my thoughts back to it's the imposter syndrome, right? Because we have that cap of how happy we should be, or how much money we should make, or where if we should be a leader, whatever it is. And that story that you tell yourself because someone else at some point in your life told you you can't be that. So you feel like an imposter. So you create these paper walls that keep you from really living in your potential, no matter where it is. And I love that you said finances because I didn't even think of that. And that is a huge one, right? Living in abundance versus scarcity because you have a cap on what you deserve.
Or think you deserve, really, because yeah, I mean, that's been personally a part of my journey with growth, with the growth of finding success in a business is being able to accept with gratitude the amount of finances that comes with it, which is different than like growing up with I just had a very lack mentality. So to know that I have a cap in finances, like that holds me back in other ways in success, not just with saving money, but figuring out ways that I'm sabotaging myself there.
Yep.
Because yes, that identity of, growing up and then moving to New York, say after college when I was like flat broke and couldn't afford a coffee, literally could not
Girl,
afford a
I've
coffee
been
at
there. I
Dunkin'
think we
Donuts.
you
Like,
and that's one thing we do have in common is being dirt poor and going, "Oh my God, I can't go to dinner with these people. I can't even I gotta order water." Like
yes.
that's where it is. And that's okay if you've been there or are there and know that it can change, but don't self-sabotage yourself to think that's where you need
Mhm.
to be.
Yes. And it comes up as a pain point. Like I physically feel it in my body as we're talking about this. My palms are sweating because it's still a trigger point, but being more aware of it of like, no, I am able to receive this back to that I identifying it and being able to just like break the habit of that limit and then being able to release it and talk yourself into the receiving end
Yeah.
of having these things come into our lives and then circling back around. I mean, all these things like you said are coming back to what we talked about last week and mindset, and it comes back around to mindset and doing the work every day, finding the books that are going to help serve you, and 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 when you find that growth, that's what's going to help move you past those limits that are holding you back.
Yeah, I think just to bring it back a little bit, it's very important to go, okay, you're saying like my palms are sweating. I remember it and it's like it makes a pit in your stomach because you remember being there. That memory, it's a core memory for you. And hopefully we can change those core memories to, better mindset memories, but it's there to protect you, right? We have that fight or flight. So your brain's going, remember that time that thing happened? However, we need to rewrite that story or even that soundtrack and say, you know what? I now have abundance. I don't have to remember that as the now. That was the then. And what is the thing that we're telling ourselves? And I love that you said, we have to change our mindset to get out of the self-sabotage. And I will tell you guys, how many times I just need to be motivated, right? I need to read that next book. I need to listen to the next podcast, which absolutely what you feed your mind is what will feed your mindset. Every single day, what you feed your mind is what's going to feed your mindset. However, outside of motivation, it's discipline and consistency. Motivation is bullshit because it lasts for as long as it gets you excited. But then the imposter syndrome starts in, and then the self sabotage. And the only thing that can beat that is showing up for yourself, whether it's in business or even finance. And I loved that you said it. I keep harping on it, but I was starting to kind of trickle back and feeling really uncomfortable in finances. And why? Because I wasn't tracking it like I used to. I wasn't on top of it. I was chasing after it, right? And that's that feeling going, well, why am I not just back to discipline and consistency of checking where I'm at and what the plan is and what we're going to do this month or in the next 6 months or in the next year? When you stop the discipline and consistency, that's when those soundtracks or those stories you tell yourself get really freaking loud.
And that old identity comes back. And
Mm-hmm.
so being, as you're saying, being proactive in the systems. And that reminds me, I just saw a quote last night that reminded me, I don't have this specific quote, how he worded it, but I know it was James Clear, and he's the author of the book Atomic Habits, which I know you love and I
Yeah.
love, and it's so good. And we'll do for sure a whole podcast on habits and discipline. But he talks about how you always fall back to the discipline of your systems, and that is exactly as you were just saying, as you get to those moments you start chasing things, but you'll
Yeah.
always fall back to whatever your systems are in place, whether it be for health, your daily small things that you're doing, tracking your finances, what you're eating at each meal, keeping up with your business, talking to people, whatever growth you're going for, whatever things you're going for, it's always coming back to those daily systems.
Well, and I think it's important to note that even when you do feel like you're self-sabotaging or you identify that you are, it doesn't mean you're failing, right? It means that you're actually trying to work on you if you're aware of it. So you're only failing if you don't go, okay, what am I going to do to change it? How am I going to change these habits? Like you said, what is the system I'm going to put in place so I don't sabotage these things that I want to achieve? I think that's the biggest thing is you're not going to fail unless you go, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing. I mean, it's we say it all the time. It's the definition of insanity. Unless you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and wanting a different result, then you have to change the system. It doesn't have to be motivation. It has to be the system. It has to be the habits. And then you take those habits and you apply discipline and consistency. And I think just to note is it doesn't mean these habits have to be extraordinary, right? Doesn't mean that you have to read 50 books a day on personal development or, do all the things in one day. It just has to be these small things, but you're committed to them. Back to the list that you said, you're honoring your agreement to yourself or to whatever it is you said you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a great point what you bring up about when you feel these moments or recognize when you're doing it and setting yourself back to your comfort zone, that it's not failure. It's so great to talk about that, because failure is that's a whole conversation in itself too, where it's, again, though, it's really mindset around it though, because I'm only
Failure
failing if I give up.
Yeah,
Really.
it's absolutely true. Failure is a figment of your imagination. It is only failure if you decide that it is. You
Yeah.
say, no, I failed at that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Failure is also bullshit, right?
When
Failure,
really I'm just learning a whole lot of lessons on how to not to do it.
how to not do that, right? Exactly. You have to learn, and yeah, there's things that might really hurt or might set you back, and I know that I have done things, but what I can tell you is I've flipped the script and go, "What could I learn from that, and how could I do that differently, or what am I never going to do?" And make that promise to myself, "I'm never gonna do that again. I'm never gonna let that happen again." And I mean, shit still happens, right? Life does not stop lifing. Things will get in your way. That entire list, and I can tell you the sickness one definitely struck out to me when you mentioned it. I know for me and maybe most of the world out there, in the last, I would say, 8 weeks, there's been quite a few viruses making the rounds in my house. I seem to get all of them. That always is a consistent thing that gets in my way. And it is something I'm working on to go, okay, I have to give myself the time to rest because I do want to heal, and one of my top priorities is my health. However, when I'm feeling better, where am I going to change my mindset to go, oh, but I've been so sick. I'm so far behind. I didn't do the things that I wanted to do. Right. And then you go into this cycle, and either you can keep relying on that sick story to say why you didn't do the things you said you were going to do, or you get right back on the bandwagon of your systems and you get right back to discipline. It's flipping that switch, quieting the noise of all the bullshit that doesn't serve you, and just getting back to the system.
And I think that can actually be a good guiding point, like your compass too, of the things that are coming up for you to hear you saying it's your health, but also your health is a priority. You know, maybe it's because we all know if we're not learning a lesson, it's going to keep showing up in our life over and over and over again. And so maybe for you, it is making that time for that, the rest, to be able to be okay, which a lot of us have a hard time with fitting the rest in. I know, especially
For
as
sure.
two females, working moms, you know, and I know a lot of people can relate to this in their lives. We don't take the time to let ourselves be healthy and to have downtime. I know I for sure don't either, but that could be part of the compass part that's guiding you to scheduling that has to be part of your system too, the downtime.
For sure, and I think you used the right word, it's scheduling. I know it sounds kinda silly to go, "I need to schedule my downtime or my stress relief time." I really think that, self-care is the kind of a fad word, but it's true, the self-care and your resting time, because I know, and I'm sure many of you listening, it's that when I rest unplanned, there's that guilt, right? Am I being, and here's that imposter syndrome, am I being lazy? Or am I resting and feel so that I can stay healthy and do all the things that I wanna do? And you sit there, right? And you're, and I love movies, right? So I have the guilty pleasure of I'll work, I'm a big Marvel fan, right? So I'll watch Marvel movies all day. I'll watch them 25 million times. I don't care. But then you sit there and you're going, "Oh my god, well, I'm spending 2 to 3 hours watching this movie when I could be doing A, B, I could be washing the dishes. I could be cleaning the house." And then you start looking around the house. Then you start getting overwhelmed because the dishes aren't done. Somebody's laundry isn't done. And then you start to feel guilty. So now your rest time has turned into stress time, which inevitably breaks the agreement where you said you were going to take care of yourself. It all goes back to it, but we need to learn to release those things that don't serve us. If I want to rest, I
Mm.
want to recover, or you know what? I'm going to go to a workout class away from my kids. Okay, yeah, I'm not fully paying attention to them, but this is my time. So I take care of me so I can take care of them.
Mm. Can so relate to that.
Right? You've definitely felt that. And it's not just as moms. I think, there's parents and just people in general. There's people that take care of their parents, right? And we're always feeling late. I think for me, the feeling is lazy, right? You start to tell yourself you're lazy because you didn't do the 25 things that you said you were going to do today, when in reality, you never were going to get the 25 things done. Don't set yourself up for failure. Set yourself up with the systems that connect to the big vision. And I know we could talk about vision all day, but stop self sabotaging yourself. Establish the systems that are connected to the things you said were the top three most important things you said that were important to you. If it's health, finances, your family, whatever it is, first identify it. And how is it part of the bigger vision? And then go, all right, what do I have to do every single day to say, okay, that actually is my priority? And I give this example a lot. a lot of times when people at the beginning of the year go, well, the most important things to me are family, health, and finances. I'm pretty sure most people listening, that's their top three, right? However, they haven't looked at their nutrition at all in the last 6 months, what they're feeding their body, and not just their body, but their mind, right? They're constantly eating foods that just don't serve them. Okay. And then they say their finances, but they haven't taken the hard conversation, maybe sat down with a spouse and said, well, what are we going to save this year? How much are we going to save every month? Whatever the difficult conversations, because maybe that's your self sabotage habit. And then the last one is saying family, but they haven't scheduled any time other than running around all week, getting them to school, getting them to their 85, million activities because they have to do soccer and they have to do football and they have to do singing and they have to do swim, whatever it is. And that's fine. We want our kids to have an enriched life, but you said family was important. So where's the hour where you guys sit down and talk to each other,
Or
right?
just play or whatever
Or
if
just
your
play,
kid's a
whatever
little.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, it could be silly. And I know, like for me and my husband, we in the last couple weeks we had some hard conversations, right? Even conversations about communication. When you stop to communicate, it's another way of self-sabotaging. You're avoiding the things you don't want to talk about. So I just want to say, take a second and figure out what are the things that are the most important to me and what are the systems I'm putting in place to make sure they stay priority.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't know
and
what else.
then also just recognizing too, being aware of those moments of sabotage. That list we made, go back and listen to it again if you need to, and write them down just so they're kind of in the forefront of your mind. I keep it on my desk because I'm not aware that I'm doing them most of the time until you have that little flag up, like, oh, right, okay, doing it again.
Right?
And
It's
so,
hard to identify in the moment for sure.
yeah. And then I just wanted to touch upon real quick what you were just saying about saying whatever your top 3 to 5 things are for, say, starting off the new year or for the year. Your schedule does not lie. Your schedule will tell you what is most important to you. If you say family is your number one priority, show me your schedule. And if it does not show it, then it's just, and that's okay if it's not your number
Yeah.
one priority, but don't, or just that's where you recognize where the shifts have to be made.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great way to end it is look at your calendar, guys. Where are you spending your time? And is it in alignment? If it's not, that's okay. Change some things. Or maybe it's not because it's just not the top priority and you need to actually identify what's most important to you.
Right, because there'll be different seasons. There are seasons where health has been more of a priority for me, and then there's seasons where family was, and then there's seasons where I had a major, major, huge success goal, and that was number one priority. And so it's okay for those things to shift. It's just knowing what the priority is and what you're doing about them in your schedule. So I think this is an awesome conversation. I could keep going on this all day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's great. And I would love to hear from our listeners. Definitely join in the community chat. I would love to hear from our happy, healthy, skeptical listeners.
Yes, we love hearing from you and we love staying in touch. So we will be coming back at you every Saturday at 9 a.m. So thanks for joining. This is Christy and Jen with Happy, Healthy, and Skeptical.